Hello everybody, Sanjay here. A little bit about wireless electric vehicle charging. So we all love a little adventure in our lives, but if that adventure leads to alignment anxiety, I think we've had enough of that, don't you? And if we try to scale that experience over to cars, well, do we have such big hands? And you realize that soon enough when you get back from a hard day's work, just wanting to eat dinner and sleep and not think about your boss. But you spend the next 10 or 15 minutes trying to park and park because that's exactly what they've come up with in the last 10 years. It's an experience very similar to Qi. You did it to your phone, now do it to your car. And finally, after several attempts, if you do manage to align it, then you go to bed and you wake up in the morning and maybe your car has not been charged at all. Just like your phone, shall we say? The problem is a spiral coil on spiral coil while enhancing coupling is very alignment sensitive. You can't even put a piece of metal on top. You need a lot of shielding because the flux is vertical and creates eddy currents. And the receiver coil has a resistance roughly 10 times larger than we have. Our receiver coil is extremely tiny and the flux lines tend to follow it as you move it. So we are inherently alignment friendly and you can parallel several of these coils for even higher power. You can even put a piece of metal right flush against the coil and it doesn't matter because the flux is horizontal, not vertical, and doesn't impinge on the metal. That changes everything. So finally this starts to make more sense. You drive in, you park, you walk away, and the flux laser gets to work for you. And you suddenly realize your battery is not heavily discharged today because your car got many more miles thanks to the fact that you don't have heavy shielding on the underside. Another reason why you got so many additional miles out of your car today was that it was lighter. We don't need heavy heat sinks for our coils. Our coil has a resistance roughly 10 times less than a typical spiral coil. And what's more, we seem to be the only ones who recognize that as the position of the receiver coil changes, everything changes. The gain profile changes, the location of the resonant peak changes. So while you're asleep, we have optimized the system for the best possible performance in terms of efficiency and power delivery. We understood all this. They didn't. Resonance is indeed a very tricky phenomenon, and being merely a double master's in physics, perhaps I understood that very keenly. And the way we have written our firmware has produced stunning results which you've already seen, and we can scale overnight because the physics does not change. Take, for example, a high clearance vehicle like this. What's special about it is that the coils are far apart and represent a low coupling. But unlike the others, we are not switching blindly at a fixed frequency. We recognize that the resonant peak location and the gain profile is a function of coupling and load requirements, etc. And so we are optimizing every milliseconds while you sleep. You could have parked casually. We don't care. We will compensate for you. You don't have to juggle your car on a charging pad anymore. We can almost hear you snore while the flux laser works for you. You could have another car waiting to be charged on the same pad. It could be a sports car and it moves in right behind this one. How do you charge this? Unlike the others who are going to switch at a constant frequency and pray for the best results, only we recognize that this represents a case of high coupling and we adapt to coupling whatever it is. You can have low coupling, high coupling. We recognize the shift in the frequency and we optimize. They don't. Another unspoken problem they've been battling with for years is foreign object detection. The way they have tried to solve it is full of errors, and the interoperability of Qi, for example, has fallen to almost 1 out of 3. Our method requires no communication between the transmitter and receiver. It is the world's best FOD. Our transmitter is smart enough to know right away that you put a coin as opposed to a receiver. And finally, a spiral coil on spiral coil live demo. So this is an old board I had. There's no firmware on this, it's manual, but it illustrates the principle. So you see, a spiral coil is very alignment sensitive. You move it around and the power drops off. Very similar to Qi, wouldn't you say? Now see our unique magnetics in action. There's a tiny coil on the underside of this car, which could be you coming back from work. You could park at any angle. We can handle it. And as I said, we don't care about a metal underside. We can handle it. Put your little coil against it and we derive full power. There's no problem at all. You can move it around. And here's a vertical load with a tiny receiver coil at the bottom, and you can juggle it in any angle actually, and I can't tell you how we did that, but you can see the amount of play you have here. This could be you driving in from work. It doesn't matter. And as I told you, this board has no firmware. If I put firmware, can you imagine how good it becomes? Life is full of adventure again. Go enjoy yourself.